There's something quietly shifting in the modern world. You can feel it, even if no one says it out loud. It's in the way conversations fade faster. It's in how men stop replying to texts that used to matter. It's in the strange silence between two people who once couldn't stop talking. We're living in an era where connection is everywhere, and yet men are disappearing from it. Not physically, emotionally. Men are retreating slowly, silently from intimacy itself. They're not running away from love out of hate. They're walking away from closeness out of exhaustion. Because somewhere between wanting to be understood and being constantly judged, a lot of men just stopped trying. A few years ago, a friend told me something I never forgot. He said, "I used to want to be known deeply. Now, I just want peace." And that sentence stuck with me because it wasn't cold, it was honest. There's a quiet epidemic spreading, not a virus, not a disease, but something emotional, invisible. Men are withdrawing from real intimacy. They laugh, they work, they socialize, but when it comes to opening up, being vulnerable, letting someone in, they hesitate. They avoid, they escape. You see it in relationships that look fine from the outside. Smiles for the photos, dates for the routine, but no depth left between them. You see it in men who once chased closeness, now keeping everything on the surface. You see it in the endless cycle of talking stages that never become anything more. So what's really happening here? Why are men, in a world obsessed with connection, quietly walking away from it? This video isn't about blame, it's about understanding. Because beneath this retreat lies something deeper, an emotional fatigue that's been building for years. A generation of men who feel unseen, unheard, and emotionally unsafe. And when safety disappears, so does vulnerability. When empathy fades, so does intimacy. We call it commitment issues, but maybe it's not fear of commitment. Maybe it's fear of losing themselves inside it. This is the silent epidemic, not loud, not visible, but everywhere. A quiet distance growing between men and emotional closeness. And if we don't talk about it, it won't just cost us love, it'll cost us understanding, it'll cost us connection itself. Because when men stop believing in intimacy, they don't just walk away from women, they walk away from a part of themselves. Section 2. Unpacking the modern male psyche. It's easy to say men are emotionally unavailable. It's harder to ask why. Because men aren't born afraid of closeness, they're taught to be. From a young age, most boys learn that vulnerability comes with a cost. Cry too much, and you're weak. Open up, and you're mocked. Show affection, and you're told to man up. So they learn to hide the softer parts of themselves. Not because they want to, but because it's safer that way. By the time they reach adulthood, the habit is complete. They can work under pressure, stay silent through pain, even love without ever saying so. But when it comes to emotional honesty, that raw, open kind of love, they hesitate. Because that's the one place they were never taught how to be strong. The pressure cooker. Modern masculinity is confusing. Men are told to be sensitive, but not too emotional. Strong, but not cold. Ambitious but available. Protective but never possessive. It's a maze of contradictions that leaves many feeling trapped between who they are and who they're supposed to be. They watch social media fill with stories about what real men should do. They hear messages telling them they're the problem, that their emotions are dangerous, that their desires are outdated, so they withdraw. Not because they don't care, but because they're tired of always being wrong. Men start building walls, not out of arrogance but self-defense. It's easier to stay guarded than risk being misunderstood. It's easier to be silent than to say something that will be used against them later. And over time, that silence becomes identity. They start believing the only safe version of themselves is the one no one can touch. The digital divide. The world promised connection through screens, but somewhere along the way, it delivered distance instead. Dating apps, DMs, endless scrolling, they gave people access, not intimacy. Every swipe became a trade of dopamine, not devotion. And men already hesitant to open up learned that vulnerability in the digital age is a liability. One wrong word, one honest confession, and it's screenshot, shared or mocked. So instead of sharing their hearts, men share memes. Instead of expressing pain, they send jokes. Instead of risking rejection, they retreat into casual flings and one-night comfort. Just enough closeness to feel human, but not enough to get hurt. It's not about lust, it's about fear. A quiet calculation. If I don't care too much, I can't lose too much. And in that mindset, modern connection turns shallow by design. The strong, silent paradox. Society celebrates the quiet man, calm, composed, unbothered, but no one asks what it costs him to stay that way. Men are told they should express emotion, but when they finally do, they're often met with discomfort or dismissal. If they cry, it's awkward. If they vent, it's too much. If they go numb, it's cold. So where does that leave them? Somewhere in the middle. strong enough to hold everyone else's pain, but too guarded to release their own. And that's the paradox. The same traits that make men dependable, their restraint, their stoicism, become the same traits that destroy their ability to connect. Because the truth is, emotional control isn't the same as emotional health. And the more a man suppresses, the more distance grows between who he shows the world and who he really is. Every man who's pulled back from intimacy isn't running from love. He's running from a lifetime of being told his emotions are dangerous. His honesty is weakness, and his softness makes him less of a man. But deep down, he still wants connection, just one that feels safe, equal, and real. And until that space exists, many will keep choosing silence over vulnerability, because sometimes the only way to survive a world that punishes your emotions is to stop showing them at all. Section 3. Societal shifts and their ripple effect. If you really want to understand why men are retreating from intimacy, you can't just look at their emotions. You have to look at the world they live in. Because this isn't just a personal problem. It's cultural, it's economic, it's systemic. It's a reaction to a world that keeps changing faster than anyone can keep up. The weight of survival. In the past, a man's identity was tied to his ability to provide. You worked hard, you built stability, and in return, you earned respect from society, from women, from yourself. But that equation doesn't hold anymore. Now men are expected to do everything: provide, protect, express, evolve, support, while still being told that their traditional role is outdated. It's confusing, it's exhausting, and in that confusion, intimacy starts to feel like another demand, another performance, another place where he might fail. When rent rises, jobs disappear, and the world tells you you're privileged for struggling quietly, love stops feeling like comfort. It starts feeling like pressure. So some men decide to step back, not because they don't want connection, but because they're trying to hold on to the little stability they still have. Peace becomes the new luxury, and they guard it the way men once guarded status. The hookup culture. We live in a world where everything's fast food, entertainment, attention, even love. Relationships have become disposable. A few texts, a few dates, and if it's not thrilling anymore, it's gone. It's not just women noticing this, men are too, and they're tired of the game, tired of pretending to care just to avoid being called cold, tired of being treated like emotional insurance policies, loved only when useful. So instead of chasing connection, they simplify. Keep it casual, keep it temporary, keep it safe. But here's the thing, the more you treat intimacy like a transaction, the less you believe in it. You stop expecting depth, you stop offering it. And before long, even love starts to feel like work you can't afford anymore. Men retreat not out of indifference but out of fatigue, from a culture that rewards surface over substance. The redefinition of roles. The world is rewriting the script for men and women, and everyone's confused about their lines. For decades, men were told what their place was: lead, protect, provide. Now those roles are questioned, challenged, sometimes ridiculed. And while progress is necessary, it's also disorienting. Many men no longer know what they're allowed to be in a relationship. If they lead, they're controlling. If they express, they're weak. If they hold back, they're emotionally unavailable. If they walk away, they're toxic. So they start to feel like no version of themselves is acceptable. And when you feel constantly wrong just for existing, you stop showing up altogether. The cost. Relationships that look progressive but feel empty. Conversations that sound deep but say nothing. Connections that start with openness but end in distance. The modern man isn't just escaping intimacy, he's escaping the confusion around what intimacy even means anymore. He's trying to protect his peace in a world that keeps demanding his participation, but never his comfort. A world that wants his vulnerability but not his perspective, that praises emotional openness until it doesn't like what he says, so he learns to disappear behind smiles, behind work, behind silence. And while the world thinks he's detached, he's actually just trying to breathe, because when everything feels uncertain, his role, his worth, his place in love, distance becomes the only thing that feels certain. He's not vanishing because he doesn't care. He's vanishing because no one asked how much it costs to stay. Section 4. The unspoken cost. Consequences of emotional retreat. At first, distance feels like peace. It feels like control, like finally having space to breathe after years of walking on emotional eggshells. But over time, that silence starts to echo, and what once felt like calm starts to feel like emptiness. Because no matter how far men run from intimacy, something inside them still remembers what it felt like to be seen and misses it. The relationship fallout. When a man begins to emotionally retreat, it rarely happens suddenly. It's quiet, gradual, almost invisible. The conversations grow shorter, the touch less frequent, the laughter rarer. At first, his partner thinks he's distracted, then she thinks he's distant. Eventually she thinks he doesn't care, but often it's not a lack of care, it's a lack of capacity. He's emotionally overloaded, worn out from trying to navigate a landscape where every expression feels like a test. So he shuts down, he nods, he listens, but he doesn't open up. And that's how relationships die now. Not in arguments, but in silence. Two people still together but no longer connected. He's there, but he's not there. Present in body, absent in heart. And the saddest part? He probably doesn't even know how to fix it anymore. The loneliness paradox. Men are lonelier than ever, but they'll never say it out loud. Because admitting loneliness feels like failure. So they keep smiling, keep working, keep moving, until it becomes routine to feel nothing. You'll see it in small things. He stays longer at work. He scrolls through his phone at midnight, not because he's looking for someone, but because silence feels too loud. And when he finally stops trying to connect, he convinces himself he's better off this way. That solitude is safer than rejection. That numbness is better than pain. It's not true, but it's easier to believe, because the truth hurts. He doesn't know how to be close anymore without feeling exposed. So he avoids deep conversations, hides behind humor, distracts himself with routine, until one day he wakes up realizing that even in a crowded world, he's alone. The emotional toll. You can't suppress emotions without paying for it somewhere else. When men lock away their vulnerability, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into irritability, into anxiety, into quiet depression. It shows up in the way he avoids eye contact, in the late nights he can't explain, in the tension that never fully leaves his shoulders, and because he doesn't talk about it, no one notices until it's too late. The statistics are clear. Men are struggling more than ever with mental health, higher rates of depression, isolation, even suicide. But beneath those numbers is a quieter truth. Most of them weren't broken. They were just tired of being unheard. A future without connection. What happens when an entire generation of men stops believing in emotional closeness? You get relationships that start fast and end faster, families without communication, communities without brotherhood, and men who can't love, not because they don't want to, but because they've forgotten how. This isn't just a male problem, it's a human one. Because when half the population stops feeling safe to connect, the whole world becomes colder. We start replacing empathy with entertainment, commitment with convenience, depth with distraction. And someday, we might look back and realize the real epidemic wasn't loneliness. It was emotional extinction. Men aren't escaping intimacy because they hate love. They're escaping it because love stopped feeling safe. And until we make it safe again, the silence will only grow louder. Section 5. Rebuilding the bridge. Pathways to deeper connection. The silence doesn't have to be permanent. Distance isn't destiny. Because what's broken in men isn't their ability to love. It's their belief that love can exist without pain. Somewhere along the way, men stop feeling safe in closeness. So maybe the answer isn't to demand more from them, but to understand why they pulled away in the first place. Because beneath every quiet man is a heart that once tried. It just learned that opening up hurts, that being honest gets punished, that being emotional gets twisted into weakness. So before you can ask men to connect again, you have to rebuild the trust that intimacy once offered. Challenging the old story, for generations men were taught to measure their worth through control of their emotions, their environment, even their relationships. But real strength isn't control, it's calm, it's choosing to stay open, even when the world tells you to shut down. To heal, men need to rewrite the definition of masculinity, not abandon it, redefine it. Masculinity isn't about silence, it's about stability. It's not about being emotionless, it's about mastering emotion without hiding it. It's not about dominance, it's about direction, the ability to lead yourself with clarity and empathy. Because men who understand their emotions don't become weaker, they become wiser. The power of vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't about crying on cue or spilling secrets to anyone who asks. It's about honesty. The kind that says, I'm struggling, but I'm still here. A man who can say, I don't know, is stronger than the one who always pretends to. Because vulnerability isn't about exposure, it's about trust. It's about knowing who deserves to see your unguarded side, and allowing them to. It's not for everyone, but for the few who've earned it, it can rebuild everything that was lost. When a man feels safe enough to be real, he doesn't just heal himself, he heals the space around him. Because connection isn't built through perfection, it's built through truth, a new kind of intimacy. Maybe intimacy in the modern world isn't about grand gestures anymore. Maybe it's about quiet consistency. It's not in the text messages or the posts, it's in the moments no one sees. A hand placed gently on a shoulder, a conversation that doesn't turn defensive, a night spent listening instead of reacting. Men don't need to perform love, they need to practice it. with patience, honesty, and presence. To rebuild intimacy, we have to slow down, to remember that closeness isn't something you chase, it's something you create, over time, through small, steady acts of care. The role of understanding. For women watching this isn't about excusing withdrawal, it's about recognizing the wound behind it. Men don't need saving, they need space to feel safe again, not judged, not mocked, not pressured to open up on command. Sometimes the greatest act of love is patience, giving someone the time to trust that you won't weaponize their honesty. And for men, healing starts when you stop waiting for permission to feel, when you realize emotional honesty isn't a gift you owe the world. It's the foundation of your peace. Healing isn't loud, you won't see it trending, you won't hear applause for it, but there's something deeply powerful about a man deciding to try again, not to perform, not to prove, but to connect. Quietly, slowly, sincerely, because maybe healing doesn't look like a breakthrough. Maybe it looks like a single text that says "I'm sorry," or a simple conversation that starts with "I miss how we used to talk." Maybe it looks like choosing not to walk away this time. The epidemic can end, but only if both sides remember that intimacy isn't a demand. It's an invitation. It's not about who's right, it's about who's willing to listen. And sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is not to escape intimacy, but to quietly step back into it. Section 6. The future of intimacy. A glimpse forward. Something is changing, quietly, gradually, beneath all the noise. While many men are still retreating, a new kind of man is emerging, one who isn't afraid to redefine what connection means. He's not chasing validation, he's not running from emotion, he's simply learning to exist somewhere in between, where solitude and intimacy can coexist. Because the future of masculinity won't be about dominance or detachment, it'll be about balance. A generation in transition. For years, men were expected to be either stoic providers or emotionally fluent partners, but rarely both. Now, a quiet evolution is taking place. More men are reading about self-awareness. They're going to therapy, journaling, meditating, talking to each other. They're questioning the scripts they grew up with. They're realizing that connection doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. That emotional expression doesn't erase masculinity, it deepens it. And that peace doesn't always mean isolation. Sometimes it means partnership that feels safe. These are small steps, but they matter, because every man who decides to unlearn silence opens the door for another to do the same. A new relationship model. The next wave of intimacy won't be built on power dynamics. It'll be built on understanding. Two people both grounded in themselves, meeting not to complete each other, but to grow together. No more chasing chaos. No more guilt for wanting calm. No more games of who cares less. Instead, connection will look like communication. It will sound like empathy. It will feel like partnership, not pressure. When men learn to connect without losing themselves, and women learn to listen without judging vulnerability as weakness, a new kind of love becomes possible, one that doesn't need performance to survive. The role of solitude. Solitude won't disappear, it'll evolve, because being alone taught this generation of men something priceless. Peace is a prerequisite for love. You can't connect from chaos. You can't love from emptiness. You can't share what you've never given yourself. So the future man won't escape intimacy. He'll approach it differently. He'll protect his space, not out of fear, but out of respect for his energy. He'll choose partners who add calm, not conflict. He'll value communication over chemistry, and most importantly, he'll no longer confuse attention with affection. Technology and the heart. Even in a digital world, the craving for real connection won't fade, but it will shift. Men are learning that 1,000 followers mean nothing if you can't be honest with one person. That endless messages mean nothing without meaning. So instead of running from emotion, they'll start filtering for it, seeking people who value depth over dopamine. The next era of relationships won't belong to those who shout the loudest online. It'll belong to those who can sit in silence together and feel understood, a quiet revolution. What's happening right now may look like withdrawal, but maybe it's something else. Maybe men aren't rejecting intimacy, maybe they're rebuilding it. From the ashes of failed expectations, from the noise of performative connection, from the exhaustion of trying to prove their worth in love. This isn't the end of intimacy, it's its rebirth, quieter, calmer, truer, and in that silence, something new is growing. A world where men don't have to escape closeness to finally feel safe in it. Section 7. The end. The return to real connection. In the end, this story isn't about men giving up on love. It's about them trying to survive it. It's about men who got tired of being told to open up, only to have their honesty used against them. Men who wanted to be heard, but learned that silence was safer. Men who still crave closeness. They've just forgotten what safe closeness feels like. But slowly, something's shifting. A quiet return, a hesitant, cautious step back toward connection. Because no matter how far a man runs from intimacy, somewhere inside him, there's still a voice whispering, maybe it doesn't have to hurt this time. The healing doesn't happen loudly. You won't see it in headlines. You won't hear it in the noise of social media, but you'll notice it in moments. The way a man lingers longer in conversation, the way he lets his guard down for just a second, the way he chooses honesty over pride. Healing starts in these quiet, unremarkable moments, when a man stops pretending he doesn't care, when he lets someone see the parts of him he's always hidden, when he chooses truth over distance, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what real strength looks like now, not a chest-beating display of confidence, but a calm willingness to be seen, even if it means being misunderstood. The return to self. Before a man can connect deeply with anyone, he has to reconnect with himself. That's the journey modern men are on, not escaping love, but rediscovering who they are without the noise, without the pressure to perform. Because the truth is, intimacy doesn't start between two people, it starts within one. When a man learns to sit with his emotions instead of escaping them, he becomes grounded. When he learns to speak his truth without shame, he becomes powerful. And when he learns that vulnerability isn't a loss of strength, he becomes free. The quiet redemption. The world rarely celebrates men who heal quietly. It celebrates the loud, the bold, the dramatic. But healing isn't a performance, it's a private conversation between a man and his own reflection. And that's happening everywhere. In apartments, in parked cars, in late-night journals. Men finally facing the weight they've carried, the walls they've built, the feelings they've buried for decades. Some of them will stay silent, some will write, some will finally talk. All of them, in their own ways, are rebuilding the bridge that broke. Not to go back to what intimacy once was, but to create something stronger, something real, a different kind of strength. The strongest man isn't the one who never feels pain. It's the one who faces it and still stays soft. It's the man who says, I was scared, but I tried anyway. It's the man who doesn't escape when love gets difficult. The man who stays, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. That's the quiet revolution no one talks about. Men learning that intimacy isn't weakness, it's courage. That connection isn't risk, it's renewal. And maybe that's how the epidemic ends, not with noise, but with stillness. With men no longer hiding behind toughness, but standing in truth. The final reflection. So if you've ever wondered why men are escaping intimacy, the answer isn't that they don't care. It's that they care more than they know how to handle. They were never taught how to feel safely, so they learned how to survive quietly. But survival isn't the same as living, and silence isn't the same as peace. Men don't need to be fixed, they need to be seen. They need to be met with understanding, not suspicion. With patience, not pressure. Because when a man feels seen without judgment, he doesn't run, he returns. And maybe one day, when the world grows quieter, we'll realize that the men who walked away from intimacy weren't rejecting love. They were waiting for a kind of love that finally felt like home. The kind that doesn't demand performance. The kind that doesn't punish truth. The kind that says, you can be safe here. That's not weakness, that's redemption. That's what healing sounds like, soft, quiet, real. And in that silence, the epidemic ends.